Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning into another Supatease video, and we have an official launch date for patch 9.2.5, and that is going to be next week. I can't believe it's already coming so soon. One of my first concerns was, does that mean that this is the end of Season 3? And it, in fact, does not mean that it is the end of Season 3. Season 4 will start later on, somewhere in the summer is what they've said, with no specific date yet, but it is not going to be ending. So if you're still working towards those achievements and titles and whatever content it is that you are doing, you're still going to have time to do so. But more importantly, with patch 9.2.5, you will have access to a wider variety of players from varying from both factions. So you're going to be able to pull in more players. You're going to be less stranded. Likely, if you're playing PvP in North America as Alliance, you probably find it difficult to find partners. Well, now you're going to have access to the Horde Bank as well in patch 9.2.5, which is a great quality of life improvement for building groups and trying to play competitively within the game. You're also going to look forward to having your base item level in the solo shuffle brawl increased to 252, so that if you're looking to make a new character or an alt, you're going to be able to gear up farming honor in there, at least hopefully a little bit easier. However, 252 to 272, for example, which is what a lot of players are who are 1800 trying to get their 2100 upgrades, is still quite a big deficit. So while it is a hefty chunk increase, it's still quite a big gap from some of the most geared players in the game playing the solo shuffle, but still it is still better than nothing. Certainly I've tried gearing up through the solo shuffle brawl. I've found being a healer or actually being a tank to get instant queues is actually sometimes the best way to just farm honor in those avenues. And now you're just going to have more base item level to do so, which is a great improvement. And hopefully then leading into Dragonflight, which is the next expansion, getting PvP gear is going to be less cumbersome than it has been for the past couple of expansions. Now it seems to be leaning in that direction. Now with this video, I wanted to cover some of the changes specifically aimed at classes and honestly the lack thereof. These are changes that we saw maybe months ago with the announcement of patch 9.2.5, and I was anticipating a bit more than this. And I've actually drawn up a list of changes looking at classes that I think are particularly problematic or non-interactive in PvP, and that was my main focus when I was looking at things that I would have potentially made for changes. Some things were left vague on my list that I'll be showing you here in a second, just because getting the exact specifics of a percent change would require more data on my side that I don't have access to. But these are the changes that are coming through before we get to that list. Anti-magic zone spell damage reduction increased to 50%, up from 20%. This is just a baseline buff. However, the Dome of Ancient Shadows talent will be removed. This means as a Death Knight, you'll get another honor talent, but your anti-magic zone is going to be slightly less powerful. And with how strong and prevalent wizards are, this may be perceived as a nerf. We'll have to wait and see. Trading durability for damage, though, is something that I prefer in PvP. I much prefer to be fighting with swords than pool noodles, having played through the Battle for Azeroth meta, so I still like that overall. Then for Warlock, you're going to be seeing your Demonic Embrace increasing your stamina by 20%, up from 10% in PvP combat, so you're going to get higher stamina, but this is because the Demon Armor honor talent is being removed, which means you are going to be more susceptible to physical damage. This will likely make you very durable against casters. But the things you're already struggling with, things like Death Knights running you down, you may still struggle. Affliction will also be getting a new PvP talent called Shadowfall, which is gain the Nightfall talent with a 100% increased chance to gain its effect, which is the Shadow Bolt proc. If you already have this talent, you may select another in the same row. I honestly think that this new PvP talent is to maybe try to bring back some of the old Shadow Bolt procking playstyle of Affliction, which I honestly enjoyed in the past, but also maybe enable Necrolord as an option for Affliction Warlock, which it really hasn't been throughout the entire expansion. Would have liked to have seen changes to some other covenants as well, particularly covenants that are magic dispellable, and adding some dispel protection to those abilities in PvP, because that's the main hindrance to being able to run, let's say, a Kyrian Death Knight or a Venthyr Demon Hunter, because when you activate your covenant ability, it can just be removed by dispel, and you just don't have a covenant ability at that point. So adding in some sort of dispel protection towards those covenants as a baseline would have been nice for those classes, but of course we are getting getting towards the end of the expansion. I'm not sure how much that development time would be worthwhile for them, but maybe kind of food for thought moving into the future when adding in abilities for classes that can be dispelled, whether or not they should be justified to have dispel protection. Now I've got my list here, which I've constructed, asked a few people about to try and formulate this list. I think there might be something that I'll add here in a second that I missed at the beginning. But again, my main focus was kind of like problematic burst moments as well as non-interactivity. So moments where you're going to have an inhuman amount of reaction time. And also, even if you did, you wouldn't be able to respond to the damage in those moments, which I think are causing the most distress amongst people in the PvP community. While we did ask for a more lethal game, I think it's important to note that damage during these burst spikes is almost inhumanely high in terms of reaction time. But over time, you will learn how to predict it, and the game will slow down. And that's because the damage outside of these burst moments is actually not as high. So for the first change here to Destruction Warlock, it was that the Blasphemy from their set bonuses no longer stuns. So when they call in that extra Infernal, when they're critting you for 60,000 damage of Chaos Bolts, it's not going to stun you. So you can have some sort of response to that amount of damage incoming to you, rather than sort of dying to it midair and then being stunned off diminishing return and not being able to respond. And then also Stacks of Rune, which is their set bonus to get up towards that double Chaos Bolt, can only be gained in combat, because I think trying to deliberately get out of the fight to stack your shards and stack your runes so that you can get this double Chaos Bolt faster without actually engaging in combat is not that interactive. It's the same type of deal, kind of like hit and then run away and then do nothing kind of playstyle that I don't think should be enabled in PvP to this extent. So whenever you're running away from the Destro Lock, because they've got big cooldowns up, they're happy you're running away because they get to restack all of their rune back up to 9 to double Chaos Bolt you. So those are the two main focus changes, so that they would be more interactive and so that the Warlock has to be in combat to be able to generate towards that moment in PvP combat. For Holy Priest, I would have liked to have seen Chastise's range reduced. Again, by what percent or what amount of yards is really up for debate, but I think being able to have a ranged physical undispellable stun is very powerful, and when you can be so far away from the target, it's not really interactive to be able to avoid or intercept the priest and stop them before they're able to chain crowd control you. This is one of the leading causes for why Rogue Mage Priest is so powerful, because the priest can just take a player out by themselves with little to no risk. So by increasing the risk to the Holy Priest, you're going to create more interactivity, potentials to swap or crowd control the priest, and will kind of bring the power level of this stun back more in line. Also, their Resurrection Legendary. Myself personally, I'm not the biggest fan of any sort of like auto bubble mechanics, so take that before I bring this up, but I think it's unlikely that we see it go away. So if we're not going to see it go away, I think I would rather see in PvP combat that the maximum number of HP that you return to, so as you heal targets in the Angel, you'll res at a higher health, is capped at 25%. Because there's a moment of intensity when you're coming out of that Angel, having played Holy Priest myself, when you're low health, where you got to have some coordination with your teammates to stop them from attacking you, have a greater fade ready, but if you don't have any Serenities, you're going to struggle to top yourself. And there is this interesting moment of intensity that happens right as you come out of the Guardian Angel, or when are they going to cancel that Guardian Angel? So I think if it was capped at 25%, that intensity would remain and kind of make this legendary, not just like an auto I get to live moment. The outplay is supposed to be that you stop doing damage, but a lot of classes can't do that. Basically, the only comps in the game that can do that are things like Rogue Mage Priest, which can kill you through this legendary almost seemingly with no effort. But I would like to see it capped at this for the rest of the game to be able to more adequately interact with it, and so the level of intensity would be higher with its interaction as well. The next change was that Apotheosis no longer makes Holy Words free of mana cost. This is a 3-minute cooldown that you activate, and all of your Holy Words, some of your most powerful heals just become free. I think having the Holy Priest having such powerful healing, great, but needs to come at more of a cost. Having your spells just be free during this time is really elongating what Holy Priest can do in a match, and it's kind of a prediction for me with the tournament that we're about to see this weekend is a lot of Destruction Warlock, Holy Priest, Outlaw Rogue, Fire Mage type of deal, and this is kind of a small contributor to it. Maybe not the most significant, but definitely a small one where the game is over for the Holy Priest, but Apotheosis is up. Boom, I've just got a bunch of free lay on hands effect type heals with my Serenities on my whole team, and now I can go back and go drink for that moment. So this was kind of a small change that I would have liked to see made for Holy Priest. Now moving into Outlaw Rogue. My main problem with Outlaw Rogue is the non-interactivity of the spec. It seemingly is that you have to have you can have close to no awareness of what's going on in terms of your own survivability because you're just so tanky, which I don't like. And the two contributors to that are actually two honor talents, one of them being float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. I want this to no longer interact with feint. Feint is already a significantly low cooldown. While this interacts with it, it basically makes it no cooldown with its uptime. So by having access to elusiveness, 30% less damage when you activate feint, it's really just like walking around with permanent wall. It's 10% stronger than D stance was for Arms Warrior, and they nerfed that accordingly to try and reduce the survivability of specs, but then brought it over to this one, albeit at that time when this talent came in, perhaps it was necessary to kind of be over bloated like this for Outlaw Rogue to try and get people to play it. But now when people are playing it, I think that it's clear that this interaction is too powerful. This is also the same talent that reduces the cooldown of evasion. However, I think it is less problematic to reduce the cooldown of evasion because you need to activate it, be aware of it, always fighting in combat to try and reduce it, face your target, not be stunned on it. But with just feint being up the whole game, taking 30% less damage doesn't seem nearly as interactive. Enduring Brawler, this is a talent that stacks to 20 and increases your stamina by a significant amount, basically for the rest of the fight because you're not really going to leave combat, at least when it comes to arena. I think that the stacks should be cut in half. I think if Outlaw Rogue's main focus is going to be survival towards melee DPS, that's great. Lower cooldown evasion, lots of crowd control and lockdown to control melee attackers. That can be its strength. But also having such a high amount of stamina means that it's basically immune to caster damage as well. So it's, again, non-interactive, not really having to pay attention because you're just attacking and it stacks up to such a high margin. I'd rather it stack up to less of a margin and actually reset after a certain period of time so that the outplay can be, oh, his stacks are about to fall, he's going to lose some health the same way you would swap to a target when a Rallying Cry or a Battle Master's Trinket is about to fall. You can swap to the target, try and maybe burst it down before they're able to have that Enduring Brawler stack up again. Something like that to add more interactivity to Outlaw Rogue. For Frost Mage, I think the main focus for them in terms of what's the problem is Deathborn. Not fun to play against, not fun to play as, mostly because when you activate it, you know you're going to automatically win the game if the enemies don't run away. But if they are able to run away and get away from you, you know that you're going to be very sad in between waiting for Deathborn to come back up. Frostbolt is such a huge amount of damage for them, basically 70 to 80% of their overall damage. I think having Frozen Orb and Ice Lances damage buffed, again, I put like an X% because of the specifics of this, but I think these areas, buffing them to make them a bit more intimidating so that there's more highlight windows in terms of being able to focus some damage outside of your Deathborns, and then reducing the base duration of their base Deathborn, not their proc, by 50%, so that if it procs while they have it, it's going to extend for a bit, but it's not going to be so oppressive for so long in a given match. Then for Assassination Rogue, Sepsis is the main culprit at the moment for kind of just like an overwhelming amount of damage that's really tough to be able to respond to, and often in cases you aren't able to respond to. I've seen couplings again with Blessing of Summer here. Blessing of Summer, really tough one to iterate a change to because it's basically just it activates and it does way too much damage, synergized with some specs at the moment. So how do you go about nerfing it? It is definitely a very all-in pick for Paladins, which is why I left it empty here at the moment in terms of what to do about it. But I think Assassination Rogue, even when not playing with Blessing of Summer, Sepsis is doing too much damage. Likely the main culprit is the Septic Shock Conduit, which is going to increase the damage of Sepsis, I believe, by 270%. At maximum rank, to my understanding. So reducing Sepsis's damage overall. Likely consequence of this is that a lot of rogues will go Necrolord. However, I don't think that Necrolord is to the same level of degree as bursty and kind of difficult to respond to as it is for Sepsis Vendetta, a Night Fae Assassination Rogue. So I do think something targeted towards Sepsis should likely come here in the near future for Assassination Rogue. Now for mages, I think one thing that has kind of been neglected on them is the shifting power from Night Fae, being able to reduce the cooldown of a lot of their significant abilities, particularly being their barriers and Dragon's Breath. I also think that Alter Time's duration is a bit excessive. If you don't have a purge, it's it can sometimes be 10 seconds of just, oh, you can't attack me. It's a very powerful cooldown. I think its duration being reduced to 5 seconds, similarly to, as we saw, Temporal Shield, which was its predecessor in Battle for Azeroth, will be a nice change of intensity towards fighting mages. They're going to activate that altar, maybe get a couple big hits of damage, then be able to bounce right back, but they're not going to be able to sit on it forever and be able to rely on it. But then again, with the shifting power, I think removing barriers from the cooldown reduction of shifting power would be a good idea in order to target the kind of self-sustainability and the healing output. Removing Dragon's Breath from the cooldown reduction of shifting power. Dragon's Breath is already so powerful with such a low cooldown that basically getting to reset it is, again, a bit excessive. And then I was on the fence with the last one, targeting Blink, and that was mostly because of the synergies with the new trinkets, which I have mentioned here at the end of this post. With the new trinkets, if the new trinkets weren't there, Blink probably wouldn't be as much of a problem. So this one is kind of like a temporary post here. Again, these are kind of suggestions or the areas of the game that I think need to be made more interactive, not a 100%. This is what needs to happen to the game. Just these are the areas I think that are causing the most distress. The next area segment is kind of hybrid healing, more specifically melee oriented. I don't think we're going to be complaining about Ellie Shaman healing, for example. But Enhance, I think specifically Chain Harvest, you could target Chain Harvest healing and reduce it in PvP. For Feral Druid, it's a really tough one. I think it's honestly the fact that their regrowths are free with Predatory Swiftness, although I've put Frenzied Regen here. I think having free healing with regrowth has been a main problem. Enhance will run out of mana and have to choose between aggressively using Purge or Healing Surge, which is a nice choice in interaction, whereas Feral is just always free, and then they can go for Cyclone when they need to. Maybe having to choose between Cyclone and Healing would be more oriented around a better decision-making process rather than just getting free healing all the time. So I didn't put that there with it, but that would be the main focus. Ret Pally, Word of Glory, same type of deal. You're losing a bit of damage for healing, but I do think that the support healing, especially the instant cast healing, is a bit excessive. For Death Knight, I really do think it is specifically Spell Warden. Having the old goat effect from Miss of Pandaria, which is the Curse of Tongues, whenever you're attacked on the target while providing this passive sustainable shield, I think is really too powerful, having them both at the same time. So I'd either like it to just be a shield or a casting reduction, not both. And then Death Strike healing can be excessive. I do get that Death Knights can only heal themselves and not heal their partners, which is significant. And it's likely just because of having all of these things working together that causes the healing to be excessive, that if you target the one that's more passive oriented, so that you're not even interacting with it, you're just reducing the cast speed, leave Death Strike the way it is. So if you time a Death Strike, you saved your runes correctly and timed it on a big hit of burst, you could heal it back, that is interactive. So I would honestly rather see the passives nerfed rather than the actual on-use abilities. For Demon Hunter, the Necrolord Demon procs, when you spawn in a demon after doing damage and kill it, it heals you for a significant amount. It's quite a lot. I think bringing down the heal that you get from that in PvP would be a good starting point for looking at Demon Hunter, but there are other things like having Blur being on such a low cooldown. I know a lot of people are going to say, why are you even talking about Demon Hunters when Rogue Mage is so powerful? Again, we're addressing everything. This is more or less the low-hanging fruit after you target the things that are at the top end of the competitive level. These are the things that will almost immediately jump back up and still be providing issue to the game. Then finally, Affliction. I think that the Drain Life healing is a bit too high, especially with Soul Rot when you get the triple Drain Life. So something towards that, especially now with the stamina going up, but the armor going down. We're going to have to wait and see. Affliction is definitely going to be best in slot against casters, I would think, after this change. After the changes that are happening, not these ones that I'm somewhat just trying to draw attention to. And then finally, the new trinkets. I'm not really a big fan of the new trinkets overall. They have made adjustments to them over time, like not being able to crit on the resonator, and changing the way the interactions with CC reduction work with echoing resolve, which have improved it, but unfortunately now it's just only these specs that are the best in the game get to use them, and then everybody else is just a victim to these specs getting to use all these new trinkets, and I don't like that. If it was possible for other specs to be able to take advantage of them, then I would probably be less against them, but it seems like they're only particularly synergizing with the best specializations in the game and not the other ones, and this is due to things like Warlocks being able to use defensives while stunned, so it doesn't matter if they're stunned longer, Mages being able to blink, having a lower cooldown blink again for shifting power, to be able to always escape those situations that other classes get punished in for using the Echoing Resolve trinket. And then the Resonator, I like that if you stack in it, you can kind of soak the damage. I think that's actually a cool interaction. But against Rogue Mage Priest specifically, if you try and run in and stack on a mechanic, you are asking to get crowd controlled. And so then that interaction that's interesting maybe for other compositions, if Rogue Mage didn't exist, becomes just basically an auto lose situation for you in a lot of cases against Rogue Mage. Some other ones, which would be kind of top contenders, would be things like Shadowy Duel, as well as Abomination's Limb, which I didn't add here. These are, the Abomination's Limb is the same deal as Necro Frost Mage. When it's up, the Death Knight is basically God, and you're going to have a really tough time. Although I think it is a little bit more survivable than a lot of these other burst moments, like, for example, the 60,000 Chaos Bolt damage. But again, allocating some of that damage out from the cooldown into more of their baseline abilities, I think would likely be a bit of a better direction for them. And then Shadowy Duel, just rogues being able to sit on this ability at all times and having an auto win. I'm not sure if I'm the biggest fan of it. And it's been kind of the cheesy mechanic for a while. It only does work when Subtlety Rogue can one-shot a target. But specifically as to how it should be nerfed, should it just be removed from the game? Not 100% on that. I think that would require more debate, but it's definitely something worth talking about, or at least directing some attention to for changes moving into the future. And that's kind of the list that I've accumulated here for PvP changes that I think would improve the experience, make it more interactive, and not require such an inhuman amount of response time to burst damage moments currently in the game. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Again, it's not a 100% bulletproof, like this needs to happen to the game or is going to happen to the game. More or less just drawing attention to the things I specifically think are causing issue for players. And other than that, thank you very much for watching the video. I hope that you enjoyed it. And if you want to stay up to date with changes that are happening to the game and news for World of Warcraft and stay ahead of the competition, make sure you hit the subscribe button. But other than that, thank you once again, and I will catch you in the next video.